obviously I had some short conversations with Brez in spring, and he made a trip to Worcester towards the end of the year. But for the most part, it's put your head down, do your job. Everybody has a job title, and with the job title comes a job description, the things you're supposed to get done. So I look at it like I have a job title, job description, get those things done, and from there, you just kind of let the rest of it fall as may. Obviously, there's a lot of up and down movement between our club and Worcester up to the big leagues.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of To The Show We Go Baseball podcast. Today's episode, we have another two-time guest on this offseason. We have Worcester Red Sox manager Chad Tracy. Now, Chad, I usually throw layups at the very beginning of these shows to actually a lot of your guys that you've managed over the past 2 years and throughout the system, but I'm going to do it a little differently for you since you're on the coaching side. But
no layups?
No, well, it is a layup actually. I'll give it this way. So I guess we'll start this off. What does a AAA manager do in his off season? How has your off season been since you've gotten home?
Full-time dad, and in a nutshell, full-time dad, and my wife does a lot of things. She works for a company with labor and delivery nurse is what she is, but she works for a company right now that does sells products in labor and delivery. So she's been able to kind of kick up and ramp up her hours that she works, that she likes to do. So it's kind of been like, all right, you're doing your thing now, and if there's soccer practice or volleyball practice or whatever, and you have work to do, I'll take care of it, kind of like she does from February all the way through September. So house projects and calls here and there with some players, and other than that, just kind of being there to pick up the slack so she can do what she wants to do.
Do you ever have a chance once you get home to just completely just disassociate from baseball, or is it always I know you have some calls and things, but is it ever hey, this weekend, I'm not doing anything with that, I'm family man right now?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, in our job as affiliate staff, I know when I was a coordinator with the Angels, and I'm sure our coordinators, the Red Sox, they don't probably get to completely disassociate. That kind of comes with the job. With just different things they're planning, they got to do that. But as coaches, when you're out there grinding away for 7.5 months, I think everybody that's in charge does a pretty good job of understanding that's a long commitment away from family, and it's a massive commitment. So for me, yeah, most of it, I'm pretty. Once I get home, especially that first week, I'm kind of just mentally decompressing from it's a big job. So. Fully no, because then a little bit after that, the playoffs starts, and you kind of get immersed in watching, I can't watch all of them, but watching games and things like that. But as coaches, we do get to, step away from it a little bit, minus, if we have a group of players that we're supposed to communicate with in the off season to keep in touch with and make sure that we know what guys are doing, which we do that. But minus that stuff, I'm able to kind of step into dad mode mostly.
And so I know you had mentioned, just obviously every now and then you got calls with players or maybe with other staff or the organization. What kind of I guess throughout the week, what are you usually talking about? If players do give you a call, is it about just off-season training, what goals they have? How involved are you in that process?
Yeah, I mean, everybody throughout our org, our coaches, coordinators, we have it. It's divided up where we have contact lists to make sure that everybody's getting contacted and that we're aware of it's mainly just, hey, where are you at? Where are you training? How often are you getting stuff done? For me, I have a handful of catchers, I work with catchers during the season. There's a handful of catchers that I communicate with. How's training going? They can send me videos and I can look at them and kind of give them, hey, be aware of this. Remember we worked on that, whatever. And just give them pointers along the way. But a lot of it is just keeping track of where they're at, where they doing their work, where are they at in their training, how they feeling, have they got things started? And then obviously, as you guys know now in baseball, there's the dead period that's fast approaching here between Thanksgiving-ish or, I don't know, it might be the end of this week, all the way till January. So just making sure that players are kind of fully up to speed. If they want programming or if they want stuff, help or whatever, that they understand there's that dead period and they can request things. And but we can't throw anything at them. So we need you to do this. So like a lot of it is just making sure the players are aware of all these things and know that they have guidance there for them.
All right. So I wanted to ask now, after year 3 in Worcester now, obviously getting there in 22 and then 23, now 24. It's been a big sample size for you. You've been pretty successful. I know AAA is not really about the record, obviously, with you just being a magician with the roster at times, which we'll get into later. But what were your overall thoughts now that we're out of the 24 season? And I guess, do you have any like takeaways from this year?
Not drastically. I mean, once you get 3 years into it, you learn a lot. I mean, learn a ton in year 1 and then a little bit more. And now you're 3 years into it and it's kind of like rinse and repeat. It's you get immersed into the job and I guess you can almost like at this point, you can see what's coming, like you have to talk to this and you almost know exactly how a conversation is going to go just because you feel like, man, I've had that conversation 15 times before over the last 2 years, 3 years now. So a lot of it, I guess to say like the unexpected, the more you do it, the unexpected gets removed. There's always something every year that pops up that you're like, man, I haven't encountered that yet. But it seems that at this point that those situations are becoming fewer and further between, like I just feel like you just kind of know what to expect and what's coming with each conversation that you're going to have and how to approach it properly with little tweaks according to who you're talking to. Everybody's different, but I feel like this year was much of the same as what we've encountered before, only just it keeps, like you said, we'll talk about the roster, but it keeps kicking up to a larger scale each year. It's like we keep setting records for transactions and players' dues. That's the nature of the beast, though.
Yeah, I have a Tyler Murray segment planned later that I talked to him about yesterday. So that'll be part of that one. So you've been in the org since 2022. You've had the chance now to work under 2 different PBOs with Heimblum and Craig Breslow. What kind of takeaways do you have, I guess, from working with Craig this year, and what have you thought about your relationship with him?
Well, I think mostly, I certainly don't want to speak for Brez. I think but in a lot of cases, having even before being here, I've worked with such and such, and then there's a change, right? And like in a lot of cases, year 1 it just feels like there's this feeling of like, across the org that they're just making assessments and taking their own mental notes of like what they see, what do they see going on process wise, philosophy wise. He lays his stuff out. What does he see of staff? What does he hear about staff? So like, that's kind of been the extent of it to this year. Obviously I had some short conversations with Brez in spring, and then he made a trip to Worcester towards the end of the year. But for the most part, it's put your head down, do your job. Everybody has a job title, and with the job title comes a job description, the things you're supposed to get done. So I look at it like I have a job title, job description, get those things done, and from there, like you just kind of let the rest of it fall as may. Obviously, there's a lot of up and down movement between our club and Worcester up to the big leagues. So our players are going there, and a lot of that communications between me and Alex on like, hey, what do you got? But certainly like there was times where Brez would shoot us text over and say, hey, congrats, job well done on Sogi or whoever. And those things are always nice to hear, but for the most part, like, the front office sets the blueprint, I guess. And our job is to go out there and just execute, what we're all supposed to execute. So that's kind of been the extent of it.
That kind of led me into the next question. Obviously, this past year, I forgot if it was Tommy or who it was, but somebody had wrote a story this past year that, of your conversations with Alex Core. I think he had brought it up that you had talked to him about some of the guys that were coming up. And when I went to New Hampshire and I talked to Chad Epperson, he also said that he would always, you would always reach out to him about a guy coming up from AA, for example.
Yeah.
How was that this year? I guess it is kind of cool to hear about, you guys obviously being in contact with, players coming through each system, but Obviously, like how was were the talks with like Chad when a guy would come up, like say a Campbell or Hunter Dobbins or somebody would come up, and then also with Cora as well?
Yeah, those are important, an important piece of it, like obviously with the day and age we're in and like data and things that you can find, like that's all stuff that's easily accessible where you can kind of find all kinds of numbers, miss rate, chase rate, like just, how hard they hit the ball, all these different things. You can find a lot of stuff and paint yourself a pretty good picture of like what that player probably will look like. But that does not, never has, never will tell the whole story, right? Like you want to know, how is he, how is he in the locker room? Like what kind of personality does he have? Does he thrive in the big moment? Like all these different types of things that aren't, bore out in numbers. Those are the conversations I have with Epi. And a lot of times similar conversations, the other way with Alex, those are the types of things that maybe he'll ask or that I'll fill him in on. And those are all things that we all have learned over a long time in baseball to be very important. You want to know what makes this guy tick. So obviously when I talk to Epi, like there's times where a player might be coming and the player even knows, hey, it's probably a short stint. Somebody got banged up. You might be there for a week and come back. And those conversations may be shorter and sweeter. Hey, he can play these positions. I'd probably put him, if you're going to play him, I'd probably put him there instead of there. And then obviously if it's a more permanent move like a Campbell or a Roman or thing like that, players like that, the conversation gets a little longer, where I want to know everything Epi can tell me about that guy and what kind of person he is. Same thing, like where does he play? Where is he best? Where have you been hitting him in the lineup? All those different types of things just to help. So when that player gets to you, like anything he can give me that I can make that player's transition to Worcester, like feel really seamless. I'm trying to do that, right? Like if he's played in Roman's case, like we played him a lot in center and left initially. I think it was center and left. There was one, I think it was left or right. I can't remember which one that he hadn't played much. I'm like, I'm not going to shove him into the play. He's played one or two games in AA in that corner. He's obviously has to do it while he's here. But things like that help you smooth it. Like, he's played the most games here. Let's get him there. Let's get his feet on the ground. And the conversations that Epi and I have, and even in some cases, Iggy, there's been guys that have come from Greenville too. And it helps, ease that player into being with us.
Yeah, I think it was left because I remember you said your plan initially was you wanted him to play a lot of left and center, and then Contreras got banged up.
Yeah, that's right.
That kind of derailed.
I think it was center was most, and then right was a little bit. But then we started incorporating him across all three as his time went on. But again, like when a guy's coming, he's going to play in AAA for the first time. It's like, let's not shove him out into a spot where it's like, oh, I've played here, 18 innings the whole year. Like that's the type of stuff that gets shared between managers. And again, you can find that information too. Like I can go look up innings at a position, find it, but I want to hear from, Epi, or he wants to hear from me on like, what does it actually look like? Does there look like there's comfort there or whatever? They're always good or if it's a pitcher, and we always talk about position players. If it's a pitcher, what kind of situations have you been using him? Those are things that you have to really dig to find. But late and close, like high leverage, late in the game, middle innings, long relief, those types of things help a lot to get guys in the right situations.
I have one more staff question for you, but I did forget, by the way, you did just bring up that, guy coming up from high A. I completely forgot that Carson came up and just absolutely tore the cover off the ball.
Yeah, Seamus.
Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you like, what was the staff's reaction to that? I mean, obviously, like, I'm assuming like the bar, like, oh, this guy's just coming up from Greenville. We just need bodies right now. Like type thing. Carson can play everywhere. I know why he was there, but then it's like, you start doing that with the bat. You're like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, we were fired up. To answer your question, what was the reaction? We were fired up because at the time, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you exactly who else was missing. Let's call it like our roster was crippled at that time. Like we were, and it happens a couple different periods of time throughout every year in AAA. Big league team gets banged up for whatever reason. All of a sudden, like 5 or 6 of your players go up and your roster's thin and so our roster was fairly crippled, and you get in those moments and you're kind of like, oh boy, like here's who we're playing. Like how many games do we think we can scratch out and win here over this period? And Carson, damned if he didn't come in and just rake. And he helped us win games. Like we were in a period of our roster at that point, and his performance helped us not only just like barely stay afloat, but like I think we won more games than we lost during that period at a time where our roster suggested we might struggle a little bit. So a lot of it was due to what he was doing. I know he had a 4 RBI game one day that helped us win a game. And but yeah, the quality of his at bats, those first 2 trips was really, really helpful to our team at a time when we were really thin.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just always will remember that because I remember Max Ferguson did it last year. Whenever they were low, and then this year was Carson. But all right, one more staff question before I move on. But obviously, you had some new additions on the staff in 2024 with Noah and Clark. But what did you see from them? Like, what did they bring to the team for you guys this year?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Don't forget Dan DeLucia too. Like Dan was in his. I mean, obviously not new to the Red Sox, but new to coaching in AAA with the WooSox, and really they did a fantastic job. I think there's a lot of times where you don't know. We obviously have things that philosophically we're following as staff on like how we do things, right? But there's also a lot of opportunity for especially skill coaches, pitching, hitting, things like that, to like make their mark on how they coach and like little things. It's not like coaches are just doing what they're like. We can throw things out like, let's try this. And a lot of times it takes a period of time to like really, see like what kind of impact's being made. And, for me, short and sweet, like I believe we had an amazing season in 2023 offensively. And I think we broke that record runs scored wise this past year. Speaks a lot to Getty and Clarkey and the work that was put in and the programming and the things that we're doing, from Oach on down offensively, like to train guys differently. And I really think that what you guys saw come on at the end of the year spoke volumes to me about, Dan and Noah were working relentlessly down there, not just on like pitch design, but they're watching them pivot at times in the middle of the year there when we were, I'd say, struggling, like, okay, stuff's showing up, velocity, but like we can't spray the ball around and walk people at this clip, and watching Luis Guerrero and Penrod and some of these guys at the end of the year, Luis Guerrero struggled early. The ERA number can come out and say, oh, it's a 3, whatever, but there's a lot of peripherals underneath ERA, right, that you look at that suggests that there was stuff going on where it's like, this isn't going to work, like we and then all of a sudden, this guy comes on at the end of the year in Worcester, and Penrod starts doing and it transformed our bullpen. It was one of the biggest areas where we struggled was to hold leads, and those guys and Hageman, a lot of guys. There's a ton of guys that started to transform. You just saw like the month of August, like things just turned.
Yeah, Van Bell too. Van Bell was another one who Brian Van Bell started off.
Unbelievable. That guy was a season saver, like when he moved out of the rotation and went into the pen, lowered the slot. Again, Dan and Noah and Justin Willard in our pitching department lowered the slot. Velocity kicked up a little bit. Now he's throwing a sinker instead of a 4-seam, and all of a sudden nobody can hit him. The changeup was electric. But those types of changes that sometimes they take time to like really see like the results. It doesn't just happen like that. I think the results we saw in the month of like, end of July, but really the month of August and September with some of these guys, the things they were working on, and to finally see the results show up, it was cool. And it's a big time testament to Dan and Noah and the work that I know they were putting in.
You make a good point, because I don't think that there was enough, and I guess it's shame on us too, because we didn't really highlight it either. But thinking back now and listening to you say that, there really wasn't enough said about what Dan and Noah had done. Because I think what people are focused on when they hear pitching development, right, they just think of who's the next ace. It's not about the true ultimate development of each individual player and how they can slot in, and help not only the WooSox, but then the Red Sox. If you look at it, you had Chase, who went up there and looked pretty good at the big league level. Bailey Horn threw some meaningful innings. Were the results what he might have wanted? No, but he was still had that opportunity. Boozer, Priester had that last start of the season. He's another one that
Richard Fitz, obviously the last, the run of 3 or 4 starts at the end. So you're right, Chris. Like all these guys are spilling right out of our AAA team, and you have to, and all of whom, every guy you mentioned had very, very specific development plans on, like, we got more specific this year on exactly what this individual needs to improve in order to have success at the big league level, and really at the AAA level too, because some of these guys you mentioned were struggling in AAA. And all of them, every one of those guys executed those things. Shuggy's across the board, not just the stuff and the profile of the stuff, but started throwing more strikes, and he added the 2-seam, and Guerrero's performance, and Fitz at the end of the year. I mean, these guys all Fitz had struggles early in the season, like big time. In the middle part of the year there, he had a heart-to-heart with Dan on things that he needed to improve, and they all did it, but again, like, it takes somebody not afraid to sit there and look the guy in the eye and tell him this isn't good enough and this needs to improve. And then it also takes awesome players that are open-minded and accountable to what they're doing to go out there and make the necessary adjustments. So again, that last month and a half, our pitching, watching some of those guys make drastic improvements was fun to watch.
All right, I told you I was going to ask you about the roster. I guess I just call it roster magic because after you saying that about the transaction thing, it's like you guys keep setting records for like how many you have. It was kind of impressive, and I know that every week in your office, you would always get questions about it. It's like, how do you do it? How do you do it? It's like it is a miracle. And I was going to ask you. I know you're a pro catcher guy, obviously with your catching background. But there was a time, I think I looked at the roster, I think your bench was all catchers. I don't think you guys had anybody that was there. I think there was a couple times, I think, where it's like you had like 3 catchers on the bench and that was it. Like you didn't have anything else. So how do you, I don't know, it might be a low question, but it's just like, how do you go about that? Like, say you're going into a series and you do have like 3 catchers on the bench and that's it. How do you make that work?
That's not easy. It's a lot of conversation prior to with Flo or whatever. Honestly, what it takes is looking at it, and you have to, as a manager or coaching staff, like you can't walk out of the dugout until you've kind of like, okay, who do we have available on the roster on the bench, and if and you have to play out scenarios like, if X happens, what do we do? If X happens, what do we do? Like all that stuff needs to be thought out before you go out there. So if something does happen, you're standing there like, okay, I didn't even think about this. In those instances, like you're talking about, like, if you guys maybe saw, maybe you didn't, but like there was days that Colo was out there. He was on and off the dev list, which the league allows you to do at times when your roster gets thin, or if it involves a DL stint for a big leaguer, they'll allow you to activate a guy, even if he's only been on the dev list for a few days. But Colo, you'd see him out there. Colo's taking grounders at second. Why is he doing that? Well, we got 3 catchers on the bench, and Colo's got a little bit of versatility. There was a time, I think once or twice, where Heine, I believe, we got so thin, like Heine ran out and finished a game a couple times at first base. And all those things, again, it's not just here's what I think we'll do if X happens. You also have to talk to the player, right? And gauge comfort. In a lot of instances, I gauged Heineman, like, he's played first for, hey, if I need to do this, like, are you comfortable doing that? Yes, Skip, no problem. I got you if it needs to happen. And then you can almost, in certain instances, how you're using your players. Sometimes somebody gets hurt, catcher has to go in, then you just go bump Heine, like, hey, I'm not planning on it, but like, I need you to kind of get loose and be ready, because if anything else happens, you're going to end up in this game. So it makes it easier when you communicate with your players and you don't ambush them and say, hey, grab your glove, you're in. They have an idea before the game that something could happen. You allow them to prepare accordingly, and then you also give them updates during the game that this may end up happening, and you give them ample time to kind of get ready, especially in instances where you're going to be asking them to do something that they haven't done very much. That's kind of how I handle it. We're fortunate, like some like Colo and Heine and guys like that, at least have some versatility to be able to go do something else. And our team was so versatile that, for Heine at first, it was a case of whoever was playing first that day was probably Bobby or Mickey or somebody else that's highly versatile. So the thought being that, okay, another position, and slides over to first base and finishes the last 6 outs of the game. So to answer your question, long-winded way of saying that's not easy. It's not fun to have to prepare that way, but it is the nature of it. And you just have to be able to look at your roster and your players and know what are they capable of doing and what am I willing as a manager to ask them to do if an emergency comes up.
I mean, I think we also saw that at the major league level once Mickey got up there. He was playing a lot of second base, and that's not really something he had done before in Worcester specifically. But all right, so Chris, I have a couple I guess random ones here. I don't know if you have anything to follow up on that before I jump into it.
Random as in your random segments?
No.
It's like we're talking players and stuff.
I'm not going to put Chad through the player randomness that I usually do. I'll save that for Sogi this afternoon.
No, I mean
Sogi this afternoon. You got to tell him I said hi. I haven't talked to him yet.
Will do.
I mean, you talked a little bit earlier how you did work with the catchers, and we talked about that a few times throughout the course of the season. We posted on it through X and Twitter or whatever people want to call it. I guess just from your perspective, right? So you got to see Kyle Teel in front of your eyes, spring training, the breakout game. Then you got to physically have him in Worcester. What was just your thoughts from him when you first got him with Worcester to the end of the season? How did he kind of really transform? Because my opinion, again, this is just, I don't got the baseball, knowledge like you do, but, one of the big things was just he really kind of settled into the clubhouse because he was very to me, he seemed very apprehensive. Yeah. He didn't want to talk to really anybody when it came to media wise. I think we kind of broke his shell a little bit, but just overall, as a player, what was your biggest takeaways for Kyle Teel?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think any time a player's coming up to a new place, especially Kyle's young, I mean, he's 22 or 21 or 22 and just in his first full season, and all these guys come up together, but it's a different level. And they know that too. They know I'm about to walk into a locker room with a bunch of dudes that have played in the big leagues before. So you're kind of in a lot of ways, Kyle's a first rounder, right? And Marcelo, all that, they get that. But at the same time, when you get to, you're the king dog, right? And AA, whatever. And then you get to AAA and there's a lot of dudes in there that were high round picks. There's a lot of dudes in there that have had a hell of a lot of success. So you kind of, you kind of lay low in the weeds there for a while and feel your way out and make sure you're in the trust of your teammates before. That's probably what you're describing, Chris, him getting comfortable in there. But his work ethic was outstanding. I thought he made big improvements from the day he arrived to the day the season ended. There was a lot of things that were just a lot of the stuff with Kyle and me and Dan was just touching on preparation, the level of preparation at that level at AAA when you're now catching guys that are big league pitchers. More so, the guys you're catching expect that level of preparation because they were in the big leagues and they prepare a certain way there. And we try to carry that down. So him understanding the level of preparation it takes, the knowledge of your pitchers that you have to know them inside and out. When you see them running in from the bullpen, you should know right away, here's how we pitch to righties with him. Here's how we pitch to lefties with him. You got to know that stuff, boom, just like that. What's his go-to pitch when you're trying to kill count, when you're trying to put somebody away, righty, all that stuff, I think was eye-opening for Kyle to know that's the big stuff. The biggest things we worked on with him on a daily basis is that stuff. Make sure you know this stuff inside and out and educate yourself. Obviously, you guys saw us down there. We worked on the physical aspects of the position, his move on receiving and holding the ground or holding an angle or different things that he and I worked on. That stuff went great too. He made some change, easy, small changes. And from the time he arrived where it was a little rough at first to the end, big improvements we saw in his receiving metrics. So, a lot of stuff was just him, getting his feet wet and understanding what this level is all about and all the little nuances to it and how much they matter. And I definitely agree with you. I saw that too. By September, he was fully settled in. I think that's why you saw the performance tip too. He didn't swing the bat great when he first got there, but when you're carrying the load of that, you're trying to hit all the things I just described to you on knowing your pitchers. You don't know any of them personally. You've never caught them. It's a heavy load. It's getting promoted to AAA is a big deal. Getting promoted to AAA as a catcher is a huge deal. Like it's way more he's dealing with than Christian or Roman was dealing with because of the demands of the position. So I believe what you saw in September and how he started to swing the bat, and then all of a sudden he started to catch a little bit better, was him kind of settling into his environment and understanding after a couple weeks, okay, I see what's being asked of me here. And Trace and Dan have laid out a nice blueprint of what I need to get done, and he got used to it.
The challenge system too, he was really impressive with.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like every time he challenged, it was a W on you. It was very rare that he lost a challenge.
Yeah.
It was something that it just seemed like it was kind of just seamless moving up to AAA.
I hope he listens to this though. There was one, I got to get him. There was one offensively that he challenged. It might quite possibly the worst challenge I've ever seen in the 2-year existence of however long we've been doing it. And his teammates wore him out about it. It was like, something he thought was up, and it couldn't have been more center cut right down the middle. So we teased him and said, stick to challenging behind the plate, because he was exceptional behind the plate. When he was catching, he knew the zone, and there was times he would do it. I'm like, no, and then that would be a strike. He's got an idea of this zone really quick. But if he's listening, that one, I think it was early September, offensively was as bad as I've seen.
The big thing that I want to see next year, and this is completely, I say to Andrew all the time, I'm not big into like the grab ass stuff. Like I just kind of avoid that. With that being said, I'm looking forward to seeing him and kind of transform into that like DJ personality that he has. I was looking forward to getting that in the clubhouse. We didn't get it at all. I get it. I understand. Brand new, like you said, you know what I mean? Like there was more important things to kind of hammer down, but that's one thing I want to see, that personality come out.
Yeah. I know that DJ Bass Monkey is what I'm told. I know that's in there. And I think he was trying to make sure that he tackled his surroundings and all the things that he needed to make sure. So I know Kyle, I know his personality. I saw it in spring training. I know, and it definitely came out towards the end, like that happy-go-lucky personality. And it'll continue to come out, again, I don't want to speculate on where Kyle or any of those kids will start the year. But if he is in Worcester, second go round, having already spent, a couple months or a month and a half there, you immediately walk into that environment. It's familiar to you, and the comfort level's high.
Did you have to have a talk with the team at all before, Kyle, Marcelo, and Roman got the call that, hey guys, it's about to get a little crazy with media attention wise?
No. Yes and no. No, in the sense that I don't. Number one, I think they are well aware of that. I think they were well aware of that. We had enough veteran guys in there that get it, that understood. Two, I don't like to have team meetings, and I try to minimize the amount of time I gather the entire team in there. And it's like, hey, everybody's got to stop what they're doing and go in for a 5-minute meeting. And I've been a player. Guys don't like that now, and I also like to do, when I do it, I like it to be like, he never does this. So the best way with that stuff to get, message out to your players, you grab some of the veterans, both on the pitching and hitting side, and just kind of you hit a few guys like Bobby or Eddie Alvarez or guys like that, or Shuggy's a seasoned veteran with our club. He's been with me for 3 years. Guys like that, you hit him and say, hey, it's probably going to get a little busy around here. Make sure the guys, and your guys can spread that message for you. The guys that you rely on to be leaders in your locker room, they help handle that stuff. So we kind of spread the word through our veterans, and I think everybody was well aware that the media output or the number of people there was going to you're going to notice an increase, and they handled it seamlessly.
Yeah, we've had a few of the Sea Dogs on here this off season, and obviously with some of those guys being a little younger, maybe not being around it as much, but a lot of them were just like, yeah, it was a little interesting. Every homestand you had, a ton of, you had Baseball America there, you had MLB Network, like whatever it was, you had a lot of people there, and I think it kind of took some of them by surprise. But like you said, though, I think AAA is a little different with having guys that played in the big. So yeah. All right, so I have a couple questions left. One of my last ones here, but this was one of the busiest trade deadlines for the Red Sox in your tenure, I guess, in terms of guys being traded out of the organization. in the minor leagues. And obviously you had some guys on your roster that were traded, that were involved in some trades. How were you? I'm trying to think of a way to word this, but it's like, I don't think they were difficult talks in regards to a few of them, as in like Nico and Zephyrjon, but guys that were going to an opportunity to get to the bigs. But what was the conversation like? And I guess, was it hard for you to do?
No, I mean, yeah, hard in the sense that, and in the case of Nico and Zeph and Matthew Lugo, obviously they're all going to the same place. So that conversation occurred with all three of them together. I mean, honestly, that was about 30 minutes before first pitch of that game. So not only we had to go get those conversations done, but we were scrambling to get the lineup changed and who do we have left to play and send it over to the other team and all that. But because, yeah, I think I can't remember. I think Matthew was supposed to be in left field that day and Nico was playing first, and Zeph was definitely up in the bullpen. Like he was coming on at that point. It's really starting. So like, yeah, we had to like rethink 30 minutes to rethink the lineup and strategy. But for those guys, to answer your question, it's bittersweet, right? Like, and I feel like that's how it felt for me. And looking at their faces, I felt like that's how it was for them. I certainly don't want to speak for them, but their faces suggested to me like, a little bit of like, you see this despair, almost like they're Red Sox, right? They're Red Sox. Like they've been Red Sox. That's what they've known. And you're telling three guys that you're not a Red Sox anymore, And so that's the first part, right? And that's the despair. That's disappointing to hear. I've been through that as a player. And to know that right off the bat that you're pretty much rocking their world in the sense that you're not a Red Sox anymore. And oh, by the way, you're going clear across the country to the West Coast. That's not an easy thing to hear for anybody. It's life changing. You got family. They have families that they have to think about how are we doing this, and so it's not easy. And then you try to finish it with what you just said, Andrew. That's that this is also potentially a great opportunity for a team, big league team that's struggling, and maybe one, two, or all three of you potentially gets an opportunity to be a big league player sooner than you would here. In this case, it ended up being the case for two of them. As I believe Zeph and Nico both made their debut. And Matthew, quite frankly, the way he was swinging it, like he may have as well, had he not hurt his rib.
He didn't get hurt. I think he would have.
Yeah. So you finish with that, like, hey, at the same time, like this may be you guys' opportunity to become big league players. And then you kind of see the facial expression change a little bit to excitement on, man, he's right. That could be the case. So that's kind of how that went. Stayed in touch with those guys. When they went up, at least Nico and Zeph, just to congratulate them and make sure they knew that we're still proud of them over here because the way they conduct themselves, they were absolute pros. And the Red Sox, we loved them over here. So to see them go over there and watch them enjoy success and become big leaguers from afar was fun to watch. So and then Yorkie was the other one, right? That was different because it was during the break, and I didn't actually get to see him in person to tell him. It was over the phone, and I think the organization called him and to tell him because we weren't with him. And I just followed up with him and had a conversation separately just to tell him I love him and that I wish him nothing but the best. And this guy was raking for us. So I felt like very strongly that, you're going to be a big leaguer before this year's over. I can almost guarantee it. And that happened for him too. So in his case, same thing. Long time now as a first round pick, and probably a little bit of disappointment to leave, but also a high level of excitement that he's log jammed and maybe he gets an opportunity to play in the big leagues there. So that's kind of how those go down.
The promotion for York to you guys, I think, it almost like felt like you kind of unlocked something for him because you understand the potential of these players. We understand what they're doing at the time prior to the trade, but it's almost as if like the change of scenery helped him out, and he just really flourished in that short period of time. And then he went to the Pirate system, continued to hit from there, made his big league debut. I'll be honest, I was disappointed, not that he was traded, because I had a really good feeling he was going to be traded. Initially, I was disappointed in the return. Not anything against Quinn Priester. It was more of, for months you're hearing about, this is what the Red Sox need. These are the bullets that's within the chamber that they can trade. But then getting to see Quinn and getting to see his work ethic and how he was around the team, it was really impressive. Every single thing that was asked of him, he did that. I would joke with him all the time. He's walking around the clubhouse. He's got the 2 shakes in his hand, and he's just like, yep, just trying to put on more size, and just, or just pulling him aside and talking about like how he's working on, the velo, he's working on this. So it was really awesome to kind of see that. Like I said, at first I was disappointed with the deal because I was hoping that maybe the Sox would have moved him and they could have got something to impact the big league roster then. But then getting to be around the guy they got, I can see why they made that move. And then we got to see that small glimpse against Tampa in that last start.
Yeah. I'll say this. You never know what a trade, how it's going to bear out, right? Like, you hope that, like, I hope that Nick York becomes an all-star, and I hope Quinn Priester becomes an all-star, and like it works for us, but you never know, right? But so I'll say only this, like Quinn Priester is completely and utterly dialed in on everything. This guy, in my opinion, he spewed, this is how a big league player prepares. And I watched, and other guys watched him because he spent time in the big leagues, right? But he, from his nutrition to his, like you said, his weight gain, to his weight room work, to what he's accomplishing on a given day in a bullpen. Like, he's going to throw a bullpen, he's going there with a purpose. And a lot of time the purpose is driven by him internally. This is what I want to do. To his start day, to listening to him converse with the starting catcher and Dan and Noah, the pitching coaches, on how he's going to attack the start, 45 minutes before he walks out there, completely and utterly dialed in is how I describe that guy. So how that trade's going to work, I don't know. What I do know is we got a guy that takes his career very seriously. And I do know that we saw a guy that, came over and the velo was, 92 that first start, and Dan and Noah, and Justin Willard, that was the first thing they attacked. And, you guys saw it too. All of a sudden you're looking up, there's 97 and there's 96 and consistently pitching at a higher velocity. Quinn's dialed. He knows he has a plan for everything he does, a purpose. He knows exactly what he needs to do in his plan to make himself better. I'll take my chances with that kind of work ethic. Like, I really was thoroughly impressed by him. So we'll see how it all bears out, right? But we have a young pitcher that has a lot of room to grow, and in my opinion, showed a ton of growth in the 2.5 months that he got to spend with us.
Andrew, I don't want to steal your thunder. I don't know if you have this as a question, but I have a follow-up to that. Going into 25 now, you have theoretically potentially get Fitz, Priester. You should have Hunter Dobbins. He should be, in my opinion, added to the 40-man today. I think it'd be an absolute travesty if the Red Sox do not add him to the 40-man. And you'll see it on social media if they don't, from at least the 2 guys on this podcast. But you're going to have Dro coming back, Drohan. You do have a guy like Brian Van Bell that can swing back and forth. He can do the bulk innings. He can start for you. You got Gambrell. Would you say that going into 25, minus any obviously external moves that you guys are going to continue to make, that might be the one of the better or even best potential rotation heading into that you're going to get to kind of coach and maybe get to see those guys impact the Sox next year?
Yeah, knock on wood, because you never know. And I also, again, like, if it turns out that way, yes, it would probably be on paper like one of the better rotations that we've entered a season with. That being said, I have no idea what the Red Sox are going to do between now and February. I have no idea if somebody gets banged up. You have no idea if Priester or Fitz or somebody ends up on the big league staff. Like, you just don't know. Like, I've learned in 3 years doing this, like, even in spring training, going to spring, like, okay, here's how I think what's going to happen. And then by March 28th in this case, or back then August or April 3rd when the season would start, you're like, well, that looks a lot different than I thought it was going to look a week ago.
Yeah, Garrett Whitlock.
The last 10 days of spring, things change.
Yep.
But to your point, Chris, yeah, like there's a lot more to be excited about on a rotation front in AAA than we've had since I've been here, for sure. Although I do not want to discount, my very first year, Cutter Crawford spent time in there. We always looked at him like, this is a guy that has a chance to be really good. Brian Bayo showed up, and that was by far and away the best pitching prospect I've seen. And so there was guys that were coming through that certainly, threw your radars up, like, holy cow, but as far as a collection, in AAA, a collection of arms plus some depth behind it, that may not even start, or it could be swing guys because you don't have enough spots. It certainly shapes up that looks really interesting. And would be awfully tough to face that rotation of guys.
Gonzalez from AA is another name that I probably should have thrown.
Yeah, Wiki. Yeah, you can't forget about Wiki. I know he struggled early in the year, but I know he finished the year really strong. So like Penrod, right? Like who knows what happens with Penrod? Like he finished the year in the bullpen because we were in the hunt, and it's like you want to see what that looks like. But Penrod was starting. Like this is a 95-mile-an-hour thrower as a starter with a nasty changeup. Like if he gets in the zone consistently, like there's another name. So when you start adding these names up, it's depth wise. You know, all of them are not going to hit, but depth wise with guys that you could potentially have in a rotation looks pretty tough.
All right, Andrew, kick it back to you now.
All right, I got 3 quick ones in to see her on. You've given us a ton of time, so appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, don't think about this one too hard, but I was curious about this. Which stat category impresses you the most out of 2 of your players' seasons the past 2 years? Your first option is going to be Bobby Dahlbeck in his 33 home runs in 2023 when he was just absolutely hitting trains in the outfield. Yeah. He was clearing the duck boat out there. So you have that one, or you have Chase Mydroth.
It's Mydroth. I knew you were going to say Mydroth.
I
knew you were going to say Mydroth. And again, if Bobby listens, like I don't want to get anybody to think that I wasn't Bobby's 2023 and like what he did. Man, people forget sometimes he also spent like 2 or 3 stints going up to the big league. So it wasn't a full slate of AAA games that he did hit 33 home runs. There was periods there in 2023 all the way up to like Bobby scuffled a little bit at the end of that year, but like all the way through like August, really like where it was insane for periods of times. But what Chase did this year in terms of walks and strikeouts was insane. They always yelled from the dugout, there's the magnet. The guys would say like there seemed to be a magnet around the strike zone when Chase would go up there. And guys would just miss. And like, and a lot of it wasn't necessarily that the guys were just missing. Chase just has such an incredible knowledge of the strike zone that Chase just wouldn't swing. Yeah, and he knew that the auto zone, he knew that zone inside and out, and he knew that ball's off. Even if it was by half a baseball, he knew it was off. I'm not swinging. And if you call it a strike, I'm going to challenge it and I'm going to win. It was insane. So I think it was, I don't know, it was like 106, right? And 75, 106, something like that. 106 something walks.
Yeah, 105 and 122 games.
Strikeouts.
That's crazy.
So yeah, what he did last year in terms of on base percentage, walking, zone knowledge was as impressive as a feat as I've ever seen.
All right. Well, I have 2 questions left, both of them from Tyler Murray. So this is the little Tyler Murray segment, just our favorite New York Knicks broadcaster, by the way. Very big congratulations to him. That is incredible watching him. Yeah. Oh my gosh, those videos of him like calling like the end of these Knicks games are incredible. Yeah. Nothing but love for him. But I know he would want me to ask this question. Do you know the transaction number off the top of your head that was this year?
83, I think. 84 or transaction or players was 83 or 84. Number of players was 83 or 84. I think transactions was north of 280.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the exact number. I know it was north of 280, 281, 283, something like that.
Okay. All right. I know he would be proud that you would know that. I think he was always the guy be like, do you know the number when we were in the office? But all right. Last question for you. We'll end it on this one. Obviously, we for people that were in Worcester or around the WooSox the last few years, know that we got to share your office with a legend, a living legend. He actually made a little cameo in the Red Sox 04 documentary that Chris actually pointed out. His name's Bill Ballou. So Tyler Murray's question to you. He wants to know, in your time knowing Mr. Bill Ballou, what's the weirdest question he has ever asked you?
Oh, God, that's hard because Bill asks he always wraps it up with something that nobody else is thinking about. So I don't even know if I can pinpoint. He's the one that'll ask you something and he always gets me to go, gosh, like, I don't know, like that's a tough one. I actually talked to Bill this a week and a half ago. He gave me a call and we chatted. So that was nice. I don't know, Andrew, to answer that. Like, I don't know if I can pinpoint the weirdest question other than to tell you it would be something about like something that happened like in 1915 or something like that. And he would ask me like, the last time that this such and such happened, I'm like, I have not a clue or whatever. But man, I don't know the answer to that other than to say he's an incredible, incredible baseball historian. His knowledge of things, and I know he has to go look them up some, but just to know where to find some of the stuff he finds is incredible. And there are a lot of times he walks out of there and gets me thinking like, wow, that's unreal. So I don't know a specific one, but there's a lot of them.
Him asking you this year, why aren't there left-handed throwing third basemen?
Yeah.
Is what got me at one point. I'm just like,
I remember that one actually. That was up there, and I think we talked about the need or how your shoulders are already lined up to first base or whatever, and the need of like having to like get yourself all the way turned to throw it is the case of like plays are bang bang and stuff. But yeah, he asks stuff like that all the time. I think he's once asked me about a left-handed catcher. Why do you think that's never happened? I know that one's come up, but he thinks about all that stuff. Yeah, he's always thinking that way.
All right. Well, that was the Tyler Murray question there. So I know he'll appreciate that. But Chad, we appreciate the time. I know you got very short off season to spend time with the fam and everything. So we do appreciate all the time you gave us, and we'll see you around in spring training. But best of luck the rest of the off season with the fam, and good luck.
No problem at all. And thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys.